Let's talk a little bit about 1031 exchanges. 1031 exchanges, I think 1031 exchanges are like literally the most powerful wealth building tool in real estate. Um, uh, Maybe 1031s and carried interest are the two that I love the best. But 1031s are so powerful. I remember and this goes back 20 years ago, right? 20 plus years ago, maybe more like 30. Well, it was my first client that did a whole series of 1031s. And I had this client who was a plumber, and he had accumulated over the course of about 10 years. He had accumulated a whole bunch of small properties. I was living in South Florida at the time, and he accumulated a whole bunch of small properties, right? Single family houses, duplexes, triplexes, and he decided he wanted to get out of those. So he actually sold them as a whole portfolio, right? And he went and he bought kind of a beat up shopping center right on US 1 in South Florida, main drag. And he did a 1031 exchange into it, right? So he didn't pay any taxes. So he had about $1 million gain on the sale of his portfolio. But he didn't pay any taxes on it because he deferred it by doing the 1031 exchange into the shopping center. And for a couple of years, I would see him out. Every time I drove by there, he'd be out there working on the shopping center or whatever. And when he got done, he leased it up and he turned around and he sold it. And he sold it for a $2 million gain. So now he's actually got $3 million of accumulated gain, right? $1 million from the first sale and $2 million from the second sale. And what he did was he went and he bought 6 auto zones in Texas, right? And these were triple net lease properties. He didn't have to do any work, right? He just collected net rents, right? So what he did was he had created for himself about a $40,000 a month net rental income, right? And he retired essentially, right? And he'll probably have those auto zones until he either dies or AutoZone goes out of business, right? So he just set himself up, and that's the power of using 1031 exchanges to ladder up properties, right? That's what you really want to do. You want to be laddering up. It allows you to defer 100% of the capital gain as long as you're buying you're trading one rental property for another, right? And the key is that it must have a greater or equal or greater value. So you sell $1 million property, you have to buy at least $1 million property to be able to do a full exchange. And the way that works is you have to identify the property within 45 days of the closing of the sale of the first property, right? So you sell the property, you have 45 days to identify a new property, right? And then you have 180 days to close on that property, right? Now, what do I tell clients now who want to do 1031 exchanges? Start shopping before you even put the property on the market. From a tax standpoint, right? You have 180 days to close on that property, 45 days to identify it. But from a reality standpoint, you probably want to have a property, that you really want, that you've identified that's a good property, and then you go and put your property on the market, because a good rental property, if you've got a good rental property you want to get rid of, it's probably going to sell pretty quickly, right? So having a property identified, a better laddered up property identified, right, is a really good practical strategy to implement, the tax strategy, right? Because otherwise, once you're on the clock, you don't want to get stuck with having to buy something that really isn't your ideal property, right? You really don't want to do that. You want to buy something that, makes sense for you as an investor also, right? So that's the power of 1031 exchanges. I think everyone should be using that.